Hi everyone, welcome back to NK Tips and welcome back to our weekly health tips series. So today we are discussing a very fascinating topic, which is cardiac health. So cardiac simply relates to your heart. So in this case, we are discussing issues that regard your heart and its health. So when was the last time you thought about your heart? Not the heart that you use to draw for your loved ones during Valentine, or the one that you use in your emotional issues. I'm talking about the actual muscle that lies within your chest that pumps blood to all parts of your body. When was the last time you thought about it? So it's amazing to know that your heart pumps about 100,000 times in a day, and by the time you are 70 years old, your heart would have beaten about 2.5 million times. Yes, that is how much work that your heart is doing to keep you alive. So it's important that we talk about cardiac health. Okay, one frightening truth is that some of the deadliest heart problems don't start with any pain or any dramatic symptoms. Sometimes they creep in very silently, but then they are able to damage your body little by little. Okay, so today let's all together uncover what keeps the heart healthy and what destroys it, and most importantly, what we can do to protect it. So, as I mentioned earlier, cardiac health generally has to do with how well your heart and your blood vessels work together to supply oxygen and nutrients to your body. Okay, so what we should know is that it is very important to have a strong heart, okay, because it is the organ that keeps you alive. When you have a weak heart, it puts your brain, your kidneys, and even your lungs and major organs of your body at risk, because it is your blood that is actually supplying oxygen and needed nutrient to all these other organs. So if the heart is not pumping the blood to reach all these organs, you have a lot of issues. So let's look at some major complications that are associated with poor cardiac health. So if your heart is neglected, okay, some of the complications that come along with it, we want to discuss it a little bit, not into so much detail, but you want to just look at some complications that come along with a weak heart. Okay, first thing is the risk of a heart attack. So a heart attack is when there's a blood clot that is preventing oxygen from reaching parts of your heart. Okay, so the part that of your heart that is not getting oxygen, that muscle there begins to die off. Okay, so that is when you might experience a heart attack. Okay, in medical terms, we call it a myocardial infarction, or MI. Second thing is the risk of stroke. So when you have a poor cardiac health, it may cause a blood clot, okay, or it may cause your blood vessels to burst, okay, causing a possible stroke. Okay, the third thing is the heart failure. Okay, so over time, conditions like high blood pressure or repeated heart damage can make your heart too weak to pump blood, okay, effectively. So patients often struggle with constant fatigue, swollen legs, and shortness of breath, or even when you are resting, you may experience shortness of breath. All right, so when your heart is weak, you may experience some of these things. And then another thing is cardiac arrhythmia. So arrhythmia is simply irregular heartbeat. Okay, so when your heart is weak, you can experience irregular heartbeat or cardiac arrhythmia. Sometimes it may be harmless, okay, but a cardiac arrhythmia case like ventricular fibrillation can stop your heart instantly. Okay, so it's important that you look at it when you're having issues like irregular heartbeat. Okay, and you may also experience a sudden cardiac arrest. Okay, so this is when the heart suddenly stops to beat altogether. So unless there's something like a CPR is done or something like a defibrillation is done, you may lose your life. So let's look at some of the warning signs that you may see that should draw your attention to the health of your heart. Okay, so first thing is chest pain or pressure in the chest. Okay, chest pain or pressure in the chest. Second thing is shortness of breath. Okay, some people may experience it even when they are at rest, even when they are not in any physical activity. You may experience shortness of breath. Third thing is you may be easily fatigued. Okay, you easily get tired. Right. Another thing is dizziness or fainting. Dizziness or fainting. The next thing is swelling in ankles, feet, or abdomen. Yes, which is caused by fluid buildup. Okay, so it's possible. A warning sign like that could relate to heart issues. Another thing is irregular or racing heartbeat. Okay, yeah. So when you see any of these signs, you should think about your heart. Okay, and so what are some of the things that put people at risk? Okay, some risk factors. Let's look at some risk factors. So one is unhealthy diets. So if you have too much salt, too much sugar, if you're taking in too much fried foods and processed snacks, all right, they have the capability of damaging your blood vessels. Okay, so it puts you at risk of getting heart problems. Second thing is lack of exercise. Okay, so the heart is a muscle and it gets weak if you don't use it. So if you are someone that is very inactive, you may be at the risk of developing heart issues because your heart needs some form of exercises. So if you are not very active, you may be at risk of getting heart problems later in life. And third thing is smoking and heavy drinking. So these ones directly affect the arteries of your heart. Okay, smoking and heavy drinking can affect or damage your arteries, so making it very difficult to function as it should. So another thing is obesity. So carrying excess weight makes the heart pump harder all the time. If you are obese, your heart gets to work harder, overwork itself so that it can be able to reach all parts of your body. Okay, so that's another thing. And the next point is chronic stress. Okay, so you have stress hormones like cortisol keeps your blood pressure elevated, and so if your blood pressure is elevated, it means that there's pressure on your heart. Okay, so such pressure can give you issues with your heart. And there are some silent conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol. Okay, all of these things can also damage your heart without showing any symptoms. So all these ones that I just mentioned are influenced by our lifestyle. Okay, but I don't know, so there are also some factors that are out of our control, something like age. So as you age, your heart gradually weakens. Okay, so this is something that you cannot control. And there's another factor of genetics, okay, and family history. So these ones are factors that you cannot control. So now let's look at how, or some of the things that we can do to probably keep our heart healthy. So one is eating smart or eating balanced diet. So try to fill your plate with colorful fruits, okay, and then try to take vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and lean proteins. You have to limit processed foods. I cannot say this, but limit processed foods, sugary drinks, and then fried meals. Try as much as possible to limit those ones. And then you have to also try to stay active, at least exercise about 30 minutes each day. Okay, try as much as possible, especially if your work doesn't demand that you do a lot of walking around, but you rather sit for long hours. Try as much as possible to exercise like 30 minutes in a day. And try to also maintain a healthy weight. Okay, if you are overgaining, you put a lot of pressure on your heart. So try to maintain a healthy weight. And another thing is you should limit alcohol and smoking. If you can limit alcohol and smoking. And then the next point is manage your stress. If you are someone that is stressed almost all the time, you put a lot of pressure on your heart. So find ways and means to manage your stress. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about is get regular health checkups, get regular medical checkup. Okay, at least once or twice in a year. You don't have to go to the hospital just because you're sick, only because you're sick, but try, even if you're healthy, go for regular medical checkup, because there are some things that may be hiding in your body that you may know but will cause problems for you in the future. Okay, so that is briefly what we can talk to you about today. All right, so if you find this video useful, try as much as possible to share with your friends. Let it reach the maximum people that we can reach. Okay, so on that note, we bring this video to an end. Stay blessed. Bye.